Sunscreens are bad in pregnancy, sunscreens are not for children, sunscreens are not for men.
What exactly is the difference between sun damage and tanning?
Sunbathe in the morning and then that will fix my vitamin D deficiency. And there is enough evidence to prove that the darker you are, the more sun protected you are naturally. It's something called seasonal affective disorder, and there's higher risk of depression in people who don't have sun exposure. Covering your face is the easiest way to protect yourself against the sun.
Reapplication.
Yeah.
Is it a complete marketing gimmick?
You have to see a doctor for it because whatever you've done is not working for you.
SPF 50 or SPF 30?
They just use a buzzword to market off their product, unfortunately.
I feel people are now very product obsessed.
Peels are absolutely not something to be done by a dermatologist.
Most overrated summer skincare trend right now.
Medicube gadget that people are using and thinking that it will do some wonders. So unlearn and then relearn. Absolutely don't self-diagnose, don't self-medicate.
Today, I have a question. Most of us must have had our brown parents say, तो क्या हुआ? टैनी तो है, हम इंडियंस है भाई. Sunscreen तो हम खुद में ही है, मतलब it's in us from the start. And sunscreen and all of this is just foreigners के चोचले. And one fine day, we enter into adulthood. What happens? Pigmentation keeps coming up in summers, acne keeps flaring up, and whatnot. And even जब हम sunscreen लगाते हैं, we turn out to be white ghosts. Today, I have someone very special with us today who is going to debunk all the myths about sunscreen and sun protection. I'm sure we're going to talk about all things sun protection, and not to forget things that dermatologists might whisper in private. And I'm sure you guys are going to share it with all your friends and family. Let's welcome Dr. Manisha, who is going to debunk all the myths and talk about all the facts. Welcome to Skin Self and Stories, Dr. Manisha. How do you feel today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I've been waiting for this episode. I'm sure everybody is going to love it. This is something that everybody has a lot of misinformation out there, and of course, a lot of them are confused with a lot of misleading going on out there. And yes, I'm really looking forward to this. So, before we dive into all of it, I really want my audience to know the person behind the doctor. That way, they connect with you easier, right? So, where did you start? Where are you from? How did you get into dermatology? Was it always a thing that you were interested in, or your skin made it to it, or any other health issue that made into it? What was it?
So I'm from Hyderabad, and I was always a bit into skincare because somehow, even as a child, I was more curious about it. I did not have any major issues or anything like that. Never seen a dermatologist, and I became one actually. So that was something. But it's always been an interest to see because in the 90s and in the 2000s is when the cosmetic industry was really picking up.
Right.
So if you had actually been following up what's happening in the world at that point, you could see that there are a lot of things available for people to make them look good, look better.
Right.
So that was always something that piqued my interest, and that's just how organically I fell in love with dermatology and pursued it.
Love it. So you are also skincare girly like everybody else is. Nice. So is there any patient story that stuck with you and you could like relate to them, that you've seen it in your personal life, someone in your relatives or maybe yours, or you've come across that and you've related to that? Is there any story as such?
I think at this point I've seen too many patients to pick one or two, frankly speaking. So there's always something that you can, personally relate in some extent, whether it, being somebody in the family or your friend or, a patient who has done something similar to what, a family member has done, trying DIYs or home remedies or ruining their skin, doing something, not following instructions. So there's so many things to relate on that aspect because, patients always have a lot of information out there even before they come to you nowadays, and they come up with a whole list of products and preconceptions about what has to be done, what has to be used, and everything. So now it's good that they are aware and they're using skincare and taking precautions, preserving their skin health. But also it comes to a point where you have to make them unlearn and then relearn what's good, what's right for them, what's good for them. So this is something that you always see, and even at a family level or friends, them and patients. So I think there are too many stories on that. Maybe like when we start discussing, we can get into specifics about all these things.
Right. Absolutely. So in your day-to-day life? What sort of patients do you regularly see? Like, what is the majority of the patients that come to you? Skin issues, hair issues, what is it?
So I would say it is a mixture of both,
Mm-hmm.
and often the same patients might have both the concerns too, which has become extremely common, especially post-COVID.
Uh-huh.
And also, I think in the past 10 years, there's a lot of change in lifestyle, stress, and there's a lot of hair loss too. So, and a lot of hormonal issues. So, in my practice, typically we see a lot of acne, aging changes, hair loss. These are the primary pigmentation. These are the primary concerns that people do tend to come with.
Hmm.
But we also have a good amount of clinical dermatology that we see here too.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. Now let's dive into the context, which is sunscreens,
Yeah.
summer skin. As much as people are excited for their summer bodies, I think everybody is also excited for their
Yeah.
perfect summer skin,
Yeah.
perfect summer hair,
Yeah.
everything summer,
Yeah.
right? So, what sort of misinformation have you heard the most about sunscreens and summer skin that people come to you with?
So when it comes to sunscreen, I don't think there's enough time to even discuss how many misconceptions that people come up with. The
Right.
most common one being that why do you have to use sunscreen indoors? So a lot of
Yes.
people say that they are using sunscreen for a very long time, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you ask them, do you use it regularly? Do you use it indoors? Do you use the correct amount? What kind
Hmm.
of sunscreen do you use? That's when you actually get the real story, where
Hmm.
most of them do not use it indoors. They don't
Right.
see what is the point, and they feel like it is only something that you have to use in vacation,
Mm.
and you just apply just few dots here and there, and then
Absolutely.
they come back from vacation expecting, like, why hasn't this worked, why have I still tanned?
Right.
So these are some very common perceptions, and they also think that sunscreens are bad in pregnancy, sunscreens are not for children, sunscreens are not for men, sunscreens
Absolutely.
are only for people who are into their looks, some kind of misconceptions around all of this. So
Right.
that's a little unfortunate, but I think lately it's been changing for the good. So that's a good
Hmm.
good sign that people are planning to use more sunscreen, because
Right.
it's not just about aesthetics or even aging well or looking good or anything. Sunscreen primarily is given to prevent skin cancers, which are
Mm.
on the
Right.
rise.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it's absolutely important that people use sunscreen regularly, and skin education from a young age can play a good part in preserving skin health in the long term too. Yeah.
Right. So that brings me to the one of the biggest myths that our parents, that brown parents especially, have. We've all grown up listening to that sunscreen is not good for you. Sunscreen causes this. Sunscreen causes that. Sunscreen causes vitamin D deficiency because you don't go out in the sun. What do you think about this? Because recently I've had an argument on Instagram as well, where people came up to me telling, no, 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 sunscreen actually makes you vitamin D deficient. That's the reason you don't go out in the sun. That's the reason this happens. That's the reason that happens. Sun is actually good for you, and they actually forget what actually happens with sun. So please educate our audience on this one myth that brown parents have always told their kids. Even today, there are a lot of houses that actually have this kind of myths to be talked about.
Yeah.
What do you have to tell about that?
So basically, vitamin D is a very important thing that is essential for everything to function well in our body. And obviously, we need to have enough so that all the hormones, are produced well. Our skin, hair, bone, joints, every organ needs it. So while we need vitamin D, there are studies saying that there's no sunscreen that you're going to use enough to actually prevent that production, right?
Right.
So usually, typically, it's recommended that you expose yourself to sun in the morning sunlight for 5 to 15 minutes. That is pretty
Absolutely.
much it.
Yes.
While most people do not actually have this exposure,
Right.
and even when they do, there's not enough vitamin D that your skin can produce, because that's how brown skin is wired.
Right.
So that's another thing. So a lot of people might think that, why do I take a supplement? Why don't I
Right.
just sunbathe in the morning and then that will fix my vitamin D deficiency? And
Hmm.
there is enough evidence to prove that that's not really enough.
Right.
So, while vitamin D is really necessary, sun exposure might not be the only way to actually get it. So, you
Hmm.
might need supplementation depending on how body levels are particularly. But of course, sun exposure does have positive effects on your mood, on your circadian rhythm. So, it is good to have morning sun exposure for that aspect. But when you look at the risk benefits and all, sun is not something that is, the sunscreens are not really dangerous at the end of the day,
Right.
right? So this is not something that causes cancer.
Hmm.
This is not something, this is something that is used to prevent cancer. This does
Exactly.
not cause fertility issues, does not imbalance your hormones.
Right.
So there are so many misconceptions out there regarding all of this, and of course any skin type needs sunscreen.
Right.
Melanin is a natural sun protecting agent that is there in our skin. So the darker you are, the more sun protected you are naturally, but that is not quite often enough.
Right.
So no matter what skin type you are, from Caucasian to type 6, you will still have effects of sun damage if you expose yourself to sun regularly without sun protection.
Absolutely. So that I have another question, which most of the people ask is, do we have to apply sunscreen even when we're exposed in the morning for that 5 to 10 minutes?
It is recommended that you do. So the general guidelines are that it doesn't matter if you're indoors, outdoors, what kind of sun exposure you're having, you're still recommended to have some kind of sun protection when you're stepping out, especially.
So sunscreen indoors, something that majority of the Indians, or at least the entire world, fights on it,
Yeah.
argues about it. Why do I need it when I'm indoors? It's cloudy, it's this season, it's that season, it's just raining, it's just winters. I don't think so I need it. I'm indoors, the curtains are off, I'm just indoors. As a dermatologist, what is your take on it? And if they're indoors, the 2 hour reapplication rule, does it apply here as well, or is there a change in it?
So the widely accepted, guidelines are that you have to reapply even if you're indoors, right? And indoors, a lot of patients do have this conception that you don't have to use it if you're home. And a lot of, especially women in India say that I don't go out. Why do I have to use it? I don't go out. Why do I have melasma? I don't know why
Absolutely.
it's increasing. So there is no concept of really avoiding sunlight in India, because even like this is sunlight too. We have a
Right.
huge window behind us. So that is sun exposure too. So you have to use it. So we can't really, like, nobody sits in a shaded room all day.
Exactly.
And even visible light can trigger some kind of skin condition. So that's where, sun protection plays a role in protecting against all the skin conditions which can be exacerbated by visible light, sunlight. So that's where it stands. And reapplication, obviously, there's a mixed consensus, not scientific evidence, but consensus on this, where the study is saying that there's certain ways of application where it can extend for like 5 hours, 6 hours, an entire day if you're absolutely indoors and not really having a lot of sun exposure, no big glass windows in your workspace or home or something like that.
Right.
So it totally depends on circumstance and what we're trying to address in a specific individual. So it cannot be made a blanket statement that you don't reapply sunscreen, you can do this if you're indoors. So that's the reason why I always say that ideally do this, and for a specific case basis, depending on their absolutely, like they're completely living in a climate where there's no sun at all, something like that, there can be little adjustments that can be made, but as a rule of thumb, reapply.
Okay, right. So that brings me to tanning, sun tanning, sun damage, everything comes
Yeah,
together, right?
yeah.
So most of them say that sunscreen actually gives you that tan. UVA and UVB obviously gives you that tan, which people obviously forget. But they would say that what kind of societal and medical terms that you can relate to when you think about tanning and sun damage. What exactly is the difference between sun damage and tanning?
Right. So tanning is obviously, your skin getting darker because of sun exposure. It can happen on a daily basis because in India there's no concept of avoiding sun,
Absolutely.
right? And sun damage is a much more broader term where you might have, it's technically just your collagen elastin breaking down from the sun exposure, the heat that is associated with it,
Right.
and the photo aging that comes with it, the sun related skin conditions that come from it, right?
Right.
So these two are different. And a lot of people have this misconception that sunscreen is making me dark.
Yeah.
So sunscreens might make your skin look a little grayed out, or because of the white cast which is associated with some sunscreens. So that can happen, but it doesn't make you dark. If when you wash it off, it goes away, right? So it
Right.
is not permanently tanning you or anything.
Right.
And also some people feel like, oh, I've applied sunscreen, but still I tan. And that's probably because you're not using the right sunscreen, you're not
Absolutely.
using the right amount or reapplying, you're not checking whether it's water resistant. You have to see whether it suits the environment you're in, and in your skin type as well.
Okay. I was almost going to ask about the sun graying and everything, but you've cleared it out. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Um, Next thing is, like we've already talked, sun exposure gives you some certain, without sunscreen, gives you certain diseases, or let's say some sort of issues in your body. What sort of, just list out a few so people can be, free of thoughts that yes, this actually happens without sunscreen, getting out in the sun and getting that sun exposure.
You are asking about things that improve its.
Yeah, no. What happens if people have, people get out in the sun without any sunscreen?
Right. So when you don't use sunscreen, the first thing is that the overall tanning effect, obviously, it keeps going on throughout your lifetime. Sun damage is cumulative. So without sun protection, there's obviously a lot of sun damage that happens over a lifetime for anyone.
Right.
So in Indian skin types, we are prone to developing a lot of pigmentary issues, which do happen with sun exposure on a regular basis. So the first things you might see are something called PDLs, where here and around the mouth, typically you see there's pigmentation that is developing, which is
Right.
extremely common in Indian skin types. And also there's melasma, freckles, skin tags, DPNs. All these things are associated with sun exposure too. Periorbital pigmentation, perioral pigmentation. So
Okay.
all these things are associated with that too. And obviously there's photo aging, which makes you develop fine lines, wrinkles, age much more faster.
Right.
So these are all things that are associated with sun exposure. This is just scraping the surface, because skin cancers, and there are a lot of other conditions which are associated with sun too, which get into that whole cancer spectrum.
Okay. So summer skin again brings back pigmentation. No matter how much you've taken care of your skin all through the year, you've treated it right, you've got some treatments done for pigmentation, yet summers are the time that pigmentation again hits back. Why does that usually happen?
So a lot of pigmentary conditions are again triggered by sunlight, like your melasma, freckles, all these things. So when you have sun exposure, more sun exposure in summer, naturally they do get triggered. And the vast majority of people are not using sunscreen right. So that is a main reason why you end up seeing a lot of increased issues in summer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now that we've talked what all happens if you don't apply sunscreen and
Yeah.
get sun exposure
Yeah.
directly, morning sunlight, as we've talked, how much of an impact does it actually take, and what all does it improve in the skin with the morning sunlight?
So
Apart from vitamin D
yeah,
deficiency levels,
yeah.
of course.
So morning sunlight doesn't have, a targeted impact on skin per se,
Hmm.
right? It is mainly recommended that, people who are not exposed to sunlight, not exposed to that, 5 to 15 minutes of sun exposure, or
Right.
people who live in countries where there's no sun at all, there is a good variation in mood, how their mood is. There's something called seasonal affective disorder, and there's higher risk of depression in people who don't have sun exposure. So for that benefit, and it also keeps your circadian rhythm in a go. So it is recommended that you have that 5 to 15 minutes exposure before the sun is really up out. So before 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, something like that in the morning. So that is where you have the least harm from UV rays, and you have the maximum benefit of being exposed to sun too.
Absolutely. So we see influencers, bloggers, everybody out there, even celebrities talking about a lot of sunscreens and sunscreen based products.
Yeah.
But nobody talks about sunglasses and hats,
Yeah.
which actually also protect
Yes.
and also help with anti-aging. What do you have to say about that? Because I feel people are now very product obsessed rather than also taking more precautions about
Yeah.
it, like
Yeah.
sunglasses and an umbrella or a
Yeah.
sun hat. What do you have to tell about that?
So obviously, I'd actually say that within a certain kind of population, they're more naturally aware that covering your face is the easiest way to protect yourself against the sun, even though they don't use products. But there's a little bit of younger generation who are into using products, but not really brought up with that mentality that you just wrap up everything on your face, wear gloves, scarves, everything, and then whenever you step out. So that is not really there. I'd say that products have their role. Obviously you have to use sunscreen even indoors, all that is there. But when you're really stepping out for a long time, especially, so your extra protections with your umbrellas, with your hats, sunglasses, scarves, all these things make a good amount of added effect too. So while reapplying is something that is always recommended, when you have this, there is a significant improvement in sun protection too.
All right, thank you so much for this. Okay, again, coming to the 2 hour rule, application after 2 hours,
Yeah.
reapplication.
Yeah.
Is it a complete marketing gimmick, or do you, as a dermatologist, also suggest the same?
So this is absolutely not a marketing gimmick, because these are all scientifically backed evidence with long-term studies, long-term data, huge amount of data to back up that sunscreen needs to be reapplied every 2 to 3 hours. So basically, all the filters in the sunscreens do get broken down with UV exposure. So the standard guideline is that you reapply every 2 to 3 hours, just to make sure that you are getting the maximum benefit of using sunscreen, and you're protecting yourself against sun exposure, right? So of course there is again a minor amount of studies which say that sunscreens do last a extended period of time if you're indoors not having a lot of sun exposure and all, but as a rule of thumb it is always recommended to reapply every 2 to 3 hours, especially you're treating some kind of sun related pigmentary issues.
Now that brings me to sunburns. I've always thought that sun anything that peels your skin or is stripping, I come from that clan, yes, where I think that my skin is improving now, but then that becomes sunburn. I've seen people with such bad sunburn and it becomes red, pink, pale. What is it actually? How do you like give anybody a heads up that you have a sunburn and you actually have to go see a doctor right now?
So after extended sun exposure, if you're seeing that your skin is peeling, you have patches, you might not have sunburn, but you can still develop sun-related allergies where you get like rashes on exposed body areas with itching, which are triggered by sunlight.
Absolutely.
That's when you have to see a doctor. Typically in Indian skin types, we don't see sunburn to an extent where there's blistering and all. But peeling, patches, all these things on extended sun exposure is something that we do absolutely see in Indian skin types. So you have to see a doctor for it because whatever you've done is not working for you.
Okay, so now let's get into sunscreen now.
Yeah.
Sunscreen was. Now the most common thing that people have is SPF.
Yeah.
Which one to buy, SPF 50 or SPF 30? Now I pulled up a article which said SPF 30 and 50 is the percentage is so small, very tiny, that actually SPF 30 what does it say? Yeah, SPF 30 blocks about 97%
Yes.
of UVB,
Yeah.
and SPF 50 blocks about 98%.
Yeah.
Is it extra, or like do we need more than that? What is it?
So it gets to a point of diminishing returns where even though you're using more SPF, it doesn't really have that added benefit.
Okay.
So 30 plus is more than enough for a regular day. Like, you go to office, school, go back to your work, do your errands, that is more than enough. But then when you're having extended, sun exposure, you can opt in for sunscreens with a higher SPF with water resistance. So typically sports sunscreens are usually 80, 100 SPF and all. So that is when you can opt in for that. But for a regular day, it doesn't have that benefit. And when you also see the cosmetic outcome of using 100 or 80 SPF or some sunscreens, it is not really going to be very pleasing or easy to use too. They're much more heavier. So
Okay.
30 to 50 SPF is absolutely enough. So it's splitting hairs if you're picking between 30 and 50 SPF. So for that 1%, I don't think there's a lot of concern that anyone should be having whether you need to use this or that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, again, we've discussed this before as well, that a majority of your patients have come up with multiple reasons for not applying sunscreen. And I'm sure a little part of them must have told it causes acne, it causes purging. Is it actually true, or is it just there another reason to just skip their sunscreen?
See, all sunscreens do not cause acne. There can be sunscreens which can cause breakouts, and typically they're heavier sunscreens which are more hydrating, more greasy, more thick sunscreens. That is what could actually cause that, and that too, like summer's coming up, so there's more humidity, more sweat. So in that context, some sunscreens can cause breakouts, right?
Okay.
But it's not always as simple as one product is causing a breakout or the most patients with acne. And if you really want to avoid acne while using sunscreen, you can always go for lighter formulations, the sheer formulations, light formulations, which are non-sticky and non-greasy, non-comedogenic, oil-free. So you can look out for sunscreens with these kind of information on the pack so that you can avoid breakouts from using a sunscreen.
Right, right. So, like we've talked about tinted sunscreens, there is again spray sunscreen, mists, and also powder sunscreens now. These are all the formats. Do every other person needs to use it, or only with certain condition, or let's say someone only wants to use it over makeup, or let's say again tinted sunscreens are usually given to pigmented skin types. What do you have to say about that?
See, there's a lot of patients do come in and ask for a tinted sunscreen because they can avoid doing makeup,
Makeup.
which is good, but in specific skin conditions like melasma, we'd want to give a more tinted sunscreen as well. So there's specific conditions for it, but also it can be a personal choice. And when it comes to sprays, covering large body parts does get easy with spray. So if you're applying the right amount with the spray, absolutely go for it. But your powders, your sticks, are not effective. They cannot be a substitute for a proper sunscreen, right?
All right.
So they can only be there as a add-on where you're just doing another finish or something, not even for reapplication. So they are definitely not a substitute for your actual sunscreen where you apply two-finger lens. So don't get a lot of people like to use the stick sunscreens or these
Exactly.
powders, because they look nice and fancy, but they don't have the same kind of efficacy.
Debunking all the myths. Now, second thing is what do you have to say about now we have SPF in every other product? Moisturizer, there's two in one moisturizer and sunscreen. Then we have vitamin C and everything in here and there, and then SPF with vitamin C. Do you think vitamin C and SPF or SPF in general, mixed with any other ingredient in the same product, is it useful or is it just baseless and you will need a proper SPF?
So SPF moisturizer is something a lot of people think that, oh, this is easy, I just have to use one product. But often when you apply the two-finger lens, it becomes very, very oily. So
Right.
I don't really recommend using both like that in that aspect. So it's not really, compliant with the patients where they're not really happy when they actually use the proper amount when it comes to moisturizer with SPF. And makeup with SPF is different again. You're not going to use two-finger lens of foundation, for instance. So
Exactly.
that's not really going to get the same amount of care as a actual sunscreen would do. Of course, SPF in your makeup is recommended because it's an add-on,
Right.
and you might not reapply when you're wearing makeup for a long period of time. So it does have an added benefit, but it's not a substitute.
Right. Let's get into the summer skin chaos now that majority of the people have. Like, why does my skin get much worse in summers? Let's say acne, let's say melasma, pigmentation. Why does it get that worse in summers? Is it the weather or is it my skincare routine that I have to change? What is it?
So a lot of pigmentary conditions are triggered by sunlight. So if you are not using enough SPF or taking enough precautions, so they will get exacerbated in summer. So that's something you have to expect. When it comes to acne, it's the humidity, it's the sweat that can make your acne-prone skin break out. So that is also something to be mindful of in summers. Making sure you have good skin hygiene is absolutely important when it comes to that. Making sure that you're using products that prevent, more buildup on your skin. Not using very heavy products when you're already acne prone or oily skin, have a lot of sweat or in a humid area is quite important to prevent acne, breakouts in
Right.
summer too.
So, sweat, like you've told, most of the people think that sweat is actually detoxifying your skin. But obviously, summers and sweating will obviously give you acne. What do you have to say about that? How can you define sweat to people? Is it detoxifying or is it bad or what is it?
Sweat is obviously getting out, some waste out of your body. So it is not exactly detox because I think that's a word that is very overhyped. Detox, clearing out all the toxins in the body, which is not
Right.
practical, doesn't really happen, right? While sweat has its natural function, it is also important to make sure that that is not triggering some other, issue on your skin like acne,
Right.
right? So excess sweat can cause irritation, it can cause acne, all the breakouts can happen because of that. So it is important that you make sure that you address it. Washing your face, applying light moisturizers, light sunscreens is absolutely important.
Now, I have another article that we have to discuss, which says that I've spent, so there's a teenager who says that they've spent every summer in the pool from age 8 to 18 with exactly zero sunscreen. And of course, he's read it somewhere that 80% of the lifetime UV exposure happens before the age of 18. Is that actually true? What is it? What is the science behind this?
So that's not exactly true because sun exposure, sun damage is cumulative throughout life. So you might not see the same kind of after effects when you're a child versus when you're in your middle age or later years, right?
Right.
So as in the what sun exactly does is break down your collagen, your elastin, your repair mechanisms keep changing throughout lifetime. So the exposure, obviously people are more outdoors when they're younger, schools, playtime, everything, there's more outdoor activity, more sun exposure. That while that may be the case, it is not really uniform and standardized for each population base because even if you take Hyderabad city, it's not uniform across the same, um, even in the same age group, it is not really uniform that they're all having a certain amount of sun exposure per day, right? So it
Right.
obviously varies by individual to individual. You might be more active in your later life, you might be more indoors in your younger life, so it completely varies. But what is uniform for everyone is your repair mechanisms, the kind of effect sun is leaving on your skin in terms of cumulative sun damage every day. Your skin changing more and more because of sun, so that is something that happens for everyone.
Right.
And the kind of response that your skin is giving, it completely depends on how you're caring for your skin.
Absolutely. So, all right. So now that it's summers in Hyderabad and it's literally hitting 40, 41 degrees every day, do you think it's achievable for us to have a hydrating, glowing skin in these summers?
So again, it has its own caveats when you're talking about hydrating, glowing skin. So obviously, you can take good care. You can have a good routine, gentle skin routine with good sun protection. Have all your nutrition right, and there's things that do help with hydration in summer, like your hydrofacials, the actual hydrofacial, the PDRNs, skin boosters. All these do have a role in hydrating your skin too. So
Hmm.
obviously, while that is achievable, it does take a lot of investment in time, and effort from anyone who wants to achieve that.
Absolutely. Now that we've talked about hydrofacials and peels, do you think this is the right time to get peels done? Because I've heard both that never get peels done in summers, and then I've also heard that no, summers are the best time. What do you have to say about that?
I wouldn't say that both are correct. I would say the truth is somewhere in between, where
Hmm.
the main factor that affects your timing for doing a procedure is your pre-care and your post-care. How well you're priming your skin, how well you're taking care of your skin post-procedure. That is what actually plays an impact in how your treatments are working for you. Because sometimes people do a treatment and completely ignore, their home care, what they have to do as a post care, go out in the sun, and you do a peel today and out in the sun tomorrow, obviously it's going to backfire a lot, right? So
Right.
when the precautions are followed exactly as given, there's no down to getting procedures done in summer.
Right. So we now see the world is now revolving around these new peels for tanning and hyperpigmentation. That is glycolic acid, someone says, mandelic acid, someone says, lactic acid, TSA. What is the correct or suitable peel that you would advise people to do if they are going through tan and hyperpigmentation?
So again, a lot of people, the main thing is that when you're coming to self-treating, I would also avoid self-diagnosis, because that is where a lot of people go wrong. So while all of these ingredients work well for reducing pigmentation, we pick what you have to do based on your skin quality, your skin condition, your skin type.
Right.
So again, that can vary from session to session for the same patient too, depending on what exactly is going on with them on that particular day.
Absolutely. So these days, again, we see a lot of salons also giving peel treatments and peels in their offers, right, in
Yeah,
their menu cards.
yeah.
What is the difference that people can see with salon treatments and then clinic treatments?
Unfortunately, more than peels, I would say that hydrofacial is the one which you see everywhere.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, peels are being marketed by salons too. Peels are absolutely not something to be done by a non-medical professional. It is something only to be done by a dermatologist,
Right.
right? Dermatologist with training in procedural, dermatology, and it has to be used for a specific condition. These are not things to be taken lightly. They can backfire pretty badly if you're not doing, like I said, the pre-care, post-care, this all matters too.
Right.
And what you're using for what condition, the entire treatment plan, whether you need any tests, whether you need any lifestyle changes, extra medication, some other specialty referral, all these things are a factor in deciding a treatment plan for a patient. So these are not done at a salon level at all. So you
Mhm.
come, you pick your peel, and then they do something. Most of the medical grade peels are not sold to salons too,
Right.
so that is also one factor. So the quality, the source, the what you're doing for yourself, and all of these are absolutely not the same at all when you're doing it at a dermatologist versus in a salon. And the other main thing that we get asked about very, very regularly is hydrofacial. Everyone
Mhm.
keeps asking, but salons have it too. My society has a salon which has a hydrofacial. They're doing it for a fraction of the cost. If you actually look deeper into it, you can find the same devices on Amazon for,
Right. Right.
not, it's not even worth the consumable that we use for a single
Oh.
hydrofacial. So there's the cost difference is mainly, also a big factor is the consumable that we use, the product that you're using, the machine that you're using. the training that your staff has in doing the hydrofacial. So all of this are a huge factor in the difference that you see. So that is one thing, and a lot of people have this misconception that hydrofacial has a massage or a face pack or something like that, because they're getting information where they're not really seeing the actual hydrofacial done.
Right.
So the main popular treatment that a lot of people have misconception is probably the hydrofacial.
Hydrofacial.
Yeah,
Now we have new Korean salons here in
yeah,
Hyderabad, which are also giving these pro level hydrofacial, is what they're saying.
yeah.
What do you think about that?
So, if you actually see what is going on in Korea, so there is nothing comparable. They're just using Korea as a buzzword to market off their product, unfortunately. So, it
Exactly.
has nothing to compare with the in salon procedures that are done in Korea. And obviously, these facials are not what is actually generating that glass skin effect. There's a lot of filler, a lot of injectables, lot of biostimulators that are being done in Korea, and everyone does it like they go for a haircut there. So
Right.
it is very misleading to say that only this is going to get you that result.
Exactly. So now that brings me to lasers. Are lasers safe in summers? Do you recommend people doing their lasers in summers?
So lasers are safe in summers. This concept actually originally comes from the West, where they don't do a lot of lasers on brown skin, tan skin. So they don't do it on that because most of the time they are not quite experienced in brown skin types, brown skin conditions, because it's just the population that they're exposed to. And we often see a lot of patients come in from the West saying that they were never diagnosed, or there's a wrong diagnosis, wrong treatment, a completely different treatment option given that would be more suitable for a Caucasian skin type, but not for a brown skin type. So this is where it actually originates from. But if you see in India, we have adapted ourselves as dermatologists with the kind of machines, procedures, protocols that we all have to
Right.
address all our Indian skin types and skin conditions in all seasons. So as long as you are following what your dermatologist is giving, it should be absolutely safe.
Okay, and again, we have a set of people who are getting influenced by the West again, that, doing lasers at home, having the machine at home is easier. What do you say about that?
So I think the prime machine that people are trying to do at home is the IPL laser hair reduction.
Yeah.
While it works really well for, I mean, to a certain extent for Caucasian skin types, it is quite common to see, in the US and UK, even Australia, a lot of med spas and even dermatologists use only IPL machines because for their skin type, it works really well.
Right.
But IPL in India, you would be hard put to find a dermatologist who actually prefers to use IPL over our skin types because
Hmm.
there's a higher risk of burns and the results are not as satisfactory too. So for our skin types, it is not really advisable to use IPL machines, especially at home.
Hmm.
And in India, there's also this other issue that there's a lot of hormone influenced growth, especially on face. So when you do use a laser at home, which is not quite as effective, it can actually increase your growth too.
Right. Okay. So now we also see a lot of skin damaging, skin barrier damage that happens after the vacation. Do you think people are actually over treating their skin before going for a vacation, and that's the reason that the skin is damaging, or what is the reason?
So most of the time, I would say that patients are very aware that I'll come back and do my procedure after my
Hmm.
vacation. That's what most of the people do say, and it's always recommended that they give a wide berth between their vacation and their procedure time too, so that there's enough time for recovery and they don't do a peel and immediately go off on a vacation. And the main thing that does sensitize their skin and damage their skin, cause more sunburns during vacation, is not taking enough care.
Okay, so there's again another marketing gimmick that salons and a lot of clinics are also using it. Summer facials, summer facial kit, summer facial sessions. What do you have to say about that? Does it actually give that instant glow that people actually, promise?
So, summer per se, there is the no one set thing that you can do to actually take extra care for summer. Let's say winter is more targeted towards hydrated therapies and all. Summer, obviously, you're looking at more pigmentation, more things to deal with your melanin. So,
Right.
no facial is really at a salon, especially, is really going to address that issue at its core level. Right.
Hmm.
And even in clinic, even if somebody is using that as a term, it might be something they're already doing it as a treatment plan. But unfortunately, patients have also come to this expectation that it's nice to hear a summer facial, so let's see what it is.
Yeah.
So even we get calls asking for all these sort of things, but unfortunately that's not how we treat patients.
Right. So as the summer nears, everybody understands that the skincare isn't working, the products aren't working. What do you have to say about skin cycling in this period. You've must have heard about period cycling, skin cycling, where you change it with the menstrual cycle, right? Does that also work in summers, or it doesn't work?
I don't think that has really anything to do with summer versus not. And these
Mm.
things are completely related to how your skin is, your skin quality, your skin condition, and what exactly you're using in terms of that. So it can vary a lot. I don't think there is anything that you have to do in terms of that. And when people come in that, products are not working, still getting tan in summer and all, usually it is probably because of excess sun exposure and all the precautions that you have to take for it.
Right. So let's deep dive into a few more articles. Yeah. Now I want to make a small detour before getting into the misinformation sector. Let's do a few articles now because I really want to read these and then you can give your advice on it, right? Um, Article 1, which suggests, so this study says that less than 30% of the Indian women use sunscreen daily, despite do not use sunscreen daily, despite knowing about UV damage. Does the number track with what you see in your clinic?
I think probably more than that.
Hmm.
So I'd say that a lot of younger women, younger people, not just women, are coming in with more awareness that they have to invest in some kind of skincare. But if you see a lot of millennials and older, they're not really aware or even interested in using sunscreen.
Right.
So they feel like, my grandmother's never used a sunscreen. Why should I? So there's a lot of that mentality that comes with you. So the number is probably even less than 30%.
Okay, this one we've already discussed, and the most interesting one. It basically says that while the darker skin tones show photo aging later, the damage accommodation is the same. So we're just seeing it later or not like avoiding it. What is it?
So darker skin types do have some kind of inbuilt sun protection, but the kind of aging changes and the kind of sun damage associated with are completely different. So if you see Caucasian skin types, they age with a lot of lines, scraping, and not much pigmentation issues. But when you go see the darker skin types, there are a lot of pigmentary issues that are associated with that, and aging comes a little secondary compared to pigmentation. And there's this concept that retinol for aging for everyone, but I always say that in Indian skin types, you have to address the pigmentation part too, because you're aging with color too, right?
Right.
So that's often ignored, and everybody just wants to use the retinol because they've heard, for years now that that's the magic ingredient that helps you
Anti-aging.
age well. Yeah.
Yes. Now this one's going to get people in the comments for me. A study that looked at oxybenzene absorption into the bloodstream after sunscreen use. What should people take from this?
You have to take it with a pinch of salt because it's not really a large scale study that showed that this has any significant impact on anything else that is going on in your body. Not cause it doesn't cause cancer, doesn't affect your fertility, or even in your pregnancy, doesn't have any kind of impact.
Right.
But as a precaution, some pregnant women want to take the precaution and avoid these filters, which is absolutely fine. But there's no real reason to fear monger and be scared of these filters.
Now let's get into the misinformation sector.
Mm.
Glutathione. Lot of them would come to you telling glutathione will change my entire color. I've born with this color. I have a little darker shade, or maybe I have spots on my face, and glutathione is the magic ingredient again. What do you have to tell about that? What does actually glutathione do? How much should a patient expect from it?
So it's a powerful antioxidant and does have its effects and benefits. But I generally don't give it as a primary treatment. A lot of patients do come in and ask that, so and so actress has gone from that shade to
Hmm.
this shade, and I think it's glutathione. It's not just that, it's your diet, your lifestyle, your skincare, your long term treatments, your skin boosters, your laser toning, your peels, your sun protection, your oral supplements, all of this combined with your makeup filters lighting as well, right? So
Oh,
it's not just one thing, to point out that this changes you absolutely overall. It
right.
does have an effect on the overall skin in the body, unlike laser toning, which you do only for your face or neck or a specific body part. So there is that benefit, but the result is not going to make you magically somebody who you're not, right? So
Right.
it can remove that dullness, the tan, help in hydration, and it can help in certain skin conditions it can have a added benefit as well.
Hmm.
But I think there is a little bit of over expectation that you can completely change skin tones and skin shades when you use glutathione.
Absolutely. Now coming to Fair and Lovely and fairness creams. I feel like the marketing is the same, just the packaging has changed, the name has changed. Let's say Fair and Lovely before is now Glow and Lovely. what do you have to tell about fairness creams? Because people still, I met someone the other day and she said she's using so and so product which actually gives her fairness. Someone else has promoted it online, so she's bought it, and now she has the very dull skin. Her skin has damaged. Her barrier is completely gone. It's ruined. What do you have to say about that?
So all these mass market products have obviously just rebranded. They have not come up with a new formulation which is not going to make them fair but only glow. So it
Absolutely.
is absolutely just a marketing thing just to make it, comply with the societal norms of today, right? Because people are against, colorism to at least some section of society.
Absolutely,
But if you
yes.
look at the vast, amount population in the country, everybody still wants to be fair and have that
Exactly.
glowing skin. So that mindset has absolutely not changed, no matter who it is.
Exactly.
So I would still say that there's only a very, 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 very minor subset of people who actually are against all of this. And most people generally think that this is better, let me just do it. And while it's a step in the right direction, I don't think it addresses the problem at large where, people are discriminated based on skin color and all. That is the actual issue, right?
Right.
So having a even skin, healthy skin, no marks on the skin, while that is all a great goal to have, this mindset that you need to change multiple shades to fit into a
Right, right,
societal norm is
exactly.
absolutely not the right way to go as well. So
Hmm.
brightening, obviously, while it's a remarketed term and everything, brightening obviously is a lot less harmful in that regard, where you're only promoting your skin can improve to a certain extent, not go shades like how it's
Exactly.
marketed on Fair and Lovely, where you
Right.
go from one shade to another,
Absolutely.
and then in the ads typically it's shown that you do this and then you get married.
Right,
You
exactly.
are no
Oh,
longer,
yeah.
you were not desirable before, but now you are because you've used this product. That is what the
Right.
ad was promoting, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
Again, with the color shades as well, a lot of them do have it in their heart always that there's some insecurity. Today's in even in today's day, people have it that I'm darker, and again, people have taken brightening as fairness, and people do not understand. How will you like give them a message out there that brightening and fairness are two different things to be
So
marketed?
yeah, so the main thing that anyone has to understand that nothing can go against the genetics that you're wired with, right? So while some people feel that, oh, so and so has become very, very fair after she must have done something or he must have done something, there must be a good reason for it. While let's say a person comes with acanthosis and you really treat all the way, and there will be a very stark difference in their overall skin tone and skin glow, everything as well. So that is what actually makes difference for a lot of people when they see that drastic change and all. But what, at the end of the day, you cannot become what you not were not already.
Absolutely.
You can only improve shades, you can only improve to a certain extent, but you cannot become a person that you're not
Exactly.
wired to begin with.
Right. So now we have DIY masks. Again, people take it as brightening, fairness. We have coffee masks, we have turmeric masks, we
Yeah.
have, basin masks and all of those. What do you have to say about that? Does it actually help anything with your tanning, sun damage, whatever that you're going through?
Yeah, most of these masks are not that beneficial because you are, expecting a small part of, let's say, coffee mask. You are expecting that caffeine is going to improve everything in your skin,
Yeah,
but the percentage, the amount it has, all of this are varied again. So it is not exactly as using a standardized product with a certain amount of, caffeine on a regular basis and then expecting a certain result. It's absolutely not the same, right?
right,
So, and a lot of the time, the problem with DIY masks is that they can cause any kind of irritation, allergic reactions, can
absolutely.
backfire. So, I don't really recommend doing all of this because there is no point to it. Right,
Right,
the benefit is not worth the kind of downs that it actually has.
right. Okay. Again, another very misused ingredient is vitamin C. People think using vitamin C instead of any other ingredient will give them that brightness, that fairness, that glow. What do you have to say about that?
One of the most overhyped ingredients, along with a few other of its
Yeah,
best
yeah.
friends. So vitamin C has its effects and benefits. It's a powerful antioxidant as well, but it is not a cure all for all the cancers in the world, right? So and people think that it's a substitute for sunscreen too. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So vitamin C breaks down with sun exposure. It is a highly unstable ingredient too, and that can cause tanning as well.
Right.
So it is not a substitute for sunscreen or anything, and there's a way to use it. Not all formulations are the same, and not everybody needs vitamin C in their routine.
Exactly. Next thing is DIY sunscreens. People use coconut oil. You know, when there are vacations, they use coconut oil. They use some sort of different ingredient from their kitchen again, saying this is natural sunscreen. What do you have to say about that? Do they actually work
There
or
is
do they not?
absolutely nothing you can do at home that will equate to a
Sunscreen.
sunscreen that is test tried and tested and proven in a lab. So
Right.
the bottom line is that there is nothing at all absolutely which will go for a good quality sunscreen.
Okay. Do you think that the beauty industry is like confusing people enough about sun protection, SPF, and everything about sunscreen?
I think to some extent, yes, because there's so many formulations, so much yarn given on the internet that you can use sunscreen drops, you can do a DIY mask, or
Exactly.
you can use this, that, you can use a Korean sunscreens which are better, or you can use some other product which is supposed to be superior and all.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, there are pluses to the social media education that is happening, that people are more aware, and they're more interested in taking care of the skin using sunscreen. We have to give benefit credit where it's due for that, but there's a lot of misinformation as well, and with misinformation, once you start looking at it, you keep getting more of that in your feed,
Exactly. Yeah.
and unfortunately that's a slippery slope where people end up using the wrong kind of things and have wrong kinds of notions about what sunscreen does, and what you have to keep using. So this is where sometimes it can be unfortunately bad, where there's so many products which are not proven, go against science, go against scientific evidence, and somebody takes up a small scale study without any kind of real results and conflate it completely, and it's widely spread over the internet, and everyone starts going with it like it's
Viral products.
yeah, like it is the actual science. So
Yeah.
making people unlearn and relearn the actually scientific backed methods and products, and how to use, what to use, what's good for what, is a little bit of a challenge again.
Right. So, as someone who personally also runs a skincare account, I do see a lot of them coming asking for only brightening, only glowing, glass skin, glowing, brightening, fairness, everything. Do you think influencers play a big part in how Indians, or at least brown skin tones, still think having a fair skin is, a win win in life?
I wouldn't completely put it on influencers, because when you see the people who are promoting body positivity, and the people who are absolutely using a lot of shady tactics, filters, everything, and making
Right,
it look like the world is very perfect, right? So the truth is probably somewhere in between. Societally, everyone's just wired that fair is better. Unfortunately, that's where all this comes from. But when people say glow, fairness, brightness, whatever it is, ultimately they just want to look better. That is
right.
where the need comes from.
Okay, so I'm sure you must have had a few patients who come with no sun protection whatsoever. They've never used it, or at least left it for a long period of time, and come in and tell that I want something, that brightens my skin.
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
I ask them to first start with the basic skin routine. Without that, there is nothing else that is going to build on top of that, because whatever you do, whatever procedure you do, you have to use sunscreen. You have to use your home care at home.
Right. So now we've briefly talked about skin. Let's talk about hair in sun in summers. How much role does sunscreen also play with your hair, or let's say how much damage does hair also go through in the sun exposure?
So hair does, with extended sun exposure, it can cause dryness, breakage, split ends, and there's in theory there's more shedding that happens in summer too. So all this can happen, and your sun exposure can damage your hair as well. So typically, I would say most people are not out in the sun enough to face real lasting damage for their hair.
Right.
But if you are somebody who is going to be out there and everything, it's always important to take precautions for your hair too.
Right. So how can someone, let's say, as you told, shedding, hair fall is the major problem that people usually face with summers, maybe with the change of water or whatever, or with the weather as well. What sort of precautions can they take?
So some amount of shedding is natural, so that is nothing to be worried about. But if you have like 82 more than 100 hairs per day shedding on average, that is when you have to see a dermatologist and get that treated. So that is not your normal hair shedding or normal hair cycle where you're seeing hair fall happen naturally and nothing to be concerned about. If it's more, you definitely have to get addressed, and that definitely needs to be taken a bit more seriously and treated.
Okay, another culturally loaded question. Does oiling your hair actually protect your hair from sun damage?
Not particularly. To some extent, yes, but not completely, I would say,
Hmm.
because oiling doesn't have any sun protection per se, but it does help in hydration, does help in moisturizing your skin, sorry, your hair. So that is where it works too. So it protects from dryness, the heat-related damage, but not entirely from sun rays and UV protection and all.
Right. So there's a lot of pollution out here now. Pollution and sweat, of course, messes with your scalp microbe, right? What advice would you give to someone who's constantly out there, and how can they like take care
The
of it?
main thing is you have to wash more frequently, use products which are appropriate for your scalp,
Right.
depending on what exactly you're facing. So that is the primary thing that anyone should be doing.
Okay. Another thing that people have is sulfate shampoos and non-sulfate. Does that also play a role in summers?
I wouldn't say that that is particularly related to summers. It is completely dependent on what we are treating.
Right, type, right. Okay, so the next thing is majority of the people do go through dandruff during summers. Why and how can they like take care of it?
So because of the sweat, humidity, and all, there can be increased dandruff. So the
Absolutely.
main solution to this is using an anti-dandruff shampoo and using it more frequently, avoiding
Okay.
oils on the scalp.
Oh, yeah, right. Avoiding oils on the scalp.
Yeah.
Now, the second thing is tying your hair very tight or braiding it very tight. Do you recommend it at summers? Because a lot of people also question that.
I don't recommend it anytime.
Mm.
So that's one. While that's one thing, of course, summer the heat, everything also can make breakage more prone. So obviously not recommended.
Okay, now we also have leave-in conditioners which have sunscreens. Do you think those are good or just again another marketing gimmick?
So while this is not a widely available, it's more of a niche product. While this is a niche product, I would still say that it has benefits to it. So if you're looking for that extra protection, absolutely go for it.
Okay. Yeah. All right, let's start with the rapid fire round. Sunscreen indoors. Yes, big yes or no?
Absolutely use it indoors.
Reapply over makeup or just spray?
It's very tricky, but spray is a better option, more practical.
Okay, white cast or breakouts? Pick your poison.
White cast
Okay. Tan removal. Patients or procedures?
procedures,
Glass skin in Indian summers. Achievable or Pinteresty fantasy?
achievable with a lot of effort.
Okay. Oily skin in summers. Blessing or a curse?
It can be a blessing if you are not acne prone.
Okay. Most overrated summer skincare trend right now.
Mm, probably the Medicube gadget that people are using and thinking that it will do some wonders. So
Mm.
probably that, yeah.
Okay. One product everyone is wasting money on.
Uh, all the, the friends, all your vitamin C, all your
Right.
niacinamide, all your, whatever fancy thing, all this, overhyped Instagram fad products. So they're absolutely not working for most people.
If you had to remove one step from everyone's skincare routine, what goes?
Remove. I think people are not doing enough for the most part. So if I have to remove most of the time, it'll be this vitamin C and niacinamide that most people are coming in saying that we're already using it. Yeah.
Right. The most unhinged sun damage home remedy a patient has ever tried on themselves.
It's the DIY sunscreens, that they have seen on on their feet.
Right. One thing you personally do in summer that dermatologists technically shouldn't admit to.
Not much. I think I obey all my rules when it comes to that. I follow what I preach.
Absolutely. Okay. If SPF was a person, reliable best friend or overhyped influencer?
Reliable, very, very reliable best friend, backed by science.
Absolutely. Okay, that's it for the rapid fire. With so much misinformation out there, bloggers, influencers, celebrities, everybody trying to be the next door skincare addict
Yeah.
and trying to give advices. What do you have to say to the crowd that's actually getting influenced with all of this?
I think there's one problem with social media that there's more restrictions on doctors and influencers in what they preach, because we are bound by our profession and our ethics. So we
Right.
don't go on Instagram preaching what products to use, what treatments to do, how to self medicate at home. So absolutely, don't self-diagnose, don't self-medicate, especially based on Instagram. And you don't know which information is correct. So always take things with a pinch of salt. And if you're really facing an issue, go see your doormat.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Manisha. This was
Mm.
so insightful. I'm sure all of you all out there sitting there thinking, I have an Indian skin, I don't need sunscreen, I do this, I'm indoors. Everybody has got each and every question answered. Thank you so much for your time,
Yeah,
Dr.
thank
Manisha.
you.
If you're watching this on YouTube or Instagram, please save this and share it with everybody that you know, because these are the conversations that we are building at Skin, Self, and Stories. No agenda, no filters, just actual answers. And I'll see you in the next one.